We are talking about grief today in session 3, and this is not so fun, let's be honest. For me, I had little kids and I became a single mom, and I had a whole lot on my plate. And also, I would say that growing up, we were never shown or taught how to grieve or deal with like anything that wasn't like easy or normal or just you could just daily life kind of stuff. So grieving was not something I wanted to do, most certainly, or made time for. And so what I did is I just shoved everything down, swallowed the tears, in the beginning, pushed through the shock, and just pushed and pushed and pushed down. And what I noticed, of course, I struggled with anxiety a lot in the beginning. And I thought, that's normal. Like, holy crap, my life's upside down. Everything's terrible. That's cool. I accepted that. But as time went on, stuff like that still kept going. Like, I would be in a terrible mood for no reason all of a sudden and then just explode. Like, it's like all that crap I shoved down just came out anyway, eventually. And what would happen is I would just be like slicing celery in the kitchen, minding my own business. It's a fine day. And then I would be a puddle on the floor, sobbing hysterically. And I hated that. But what I saw is after I did that, as much as I didn't want to do it, I would feel a little bit better. And so I don't know how far this was. Judging time during this like period of time feels impossible for me. I'm like, I don't know, 4 years, 2 years, whatever. But I think maybe it was like a year into finding out, maybe 2 years. Again, I don't know. I realized that I need to make myself grieve. So I don't know if this was right or wrong, but this is what I did. I had pushed everything down so much to where I really couldn't cry about it. I felt kind of numb about it. I could be maybe pissed about it, but I couldn't really I don't know. I felt like I couldn't let it out. And so, no joke, this is what I did. I played P.S. I Love You. I watched the whole freaking movie and I cried. I super ugly cried through the whole thing. I think immediately I started crying and I never stopped all night long. And I was exhausted and puffy eyed, but I felt so much better. And my crazy little thing I came up with for me worked. And I got smarter. The next time I did it, I watched The Notebook, which again, how do you not cry if you're alive and watch that movie? And so, but I was smarter this time and I started it at noon so I could cry all day but still go to bed, So for me, I had to force feed myself grief or make myself grieve. So I don't want that for you because it does really suck. In the moment you're oh, deal with that later. I don't have time. But I feel like I kept myself in this place for too long and maybe I stayed there longer. And that sucks. Nobody wants to stay where we are for very long. So we're going to talk about grieving so that you can do it well, so you can really actually heal from this and you don't have to stay stuck like I stayed stuck. And so I'm going to start off with Julia and talk about what is grief, what is grieving and why is it important to us?
Yeah. Grief is such a complex issue and it shows up in so many different ways and it can be about so many different things. But essentially grief is about the end of something. Something has finished, and whether or not it's grieving an actual loss of a human being through death where that's this very clean end, or if it's about losing something that you knew about someone, something that you believed about someone, something that you had that you gave to someone. And it's the end of that. It's not only the end of the relationship, that's hard enough, but it's also the end of how you saw that person. It's also the end of that trust that you had. It's, we talked about that with trauma, that it causes this fundamental shift in how we see others, ourselves, or the world. We're grieving almost even, for some of you, maybe even this grief of that innocence of just sort of trusting and thinking that this person was safe, that this person had my back, that this person was my person. And like Mello said, like, this was my person. And so it's grieving the loss of that. And there's no like right way to do it. Again, we're going to be talking about it. There's things that we can do that can kind of help us move through the process with less war wounds. And there's things that we can do that can prolong it and make it worse. And so Mel is going to talk about some things that you can do, some tools that you can use with that. But again, like there's no such thing as like this grief process that there's like, you may have seen that or heard that like there's this step and then this step and this step. It's not a linear process. It's you go from one stage and then you go back to another one and then you go forward to this one and you go back to that one, and it's all over the place. So it's one of those things, and this is why this stuff is so hard, is because we want to put it in a box. And like Melissa says, we want a step by step. How do I do this? I'm willing to go through the steps so I can get through it, so I can get past it, so I can stop feeling this way, because this sucks. There are few things that suck more than what you're going through right now. And we want to get through it. It's why we do things to try to numb or avoid it, because it's so painful. But again, we're going to be talking about this. You're probably going to want to slap most of us throughout this process by just saying like, there's no simple solution. There's no just like do this and it's done. But we're going to give you tools, and we're going to give you understanding, and we're going to give you information that's going to help you just feel like you can do it, like you can go through and make it through and come out the other side, even in the lack of an easy button that we would give you. We would give you the easy button. Like, believe me, I think, Melissa and Mello, who have been through these, horrible traumatic things, have done the research. They've dug, they've looked. If they had come to an easy button, if I had come to an easy button, I would absolutely give it to you. But we're going to teach you how to kind of be with yourself in this process, and to hopefully make it less intense, make it, help you move through it with less war wounds and maybe even in less time than just trying to figure it out on your own. So for now, understanding that grief is your brain. Your brain is very confused. Again, it doesn't know where to land. It doesn't know where to ground itself. It's trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. Like Mello said, you're being faced with the impossible, and your brain doesn't know what to do with that, how to handle that. And so to know that there isn't a process, you're not failing, you didn't miss something. If you're here and there and everywhere, if one day, like Melissa said, you're chopping vegetables and you think you've got it, and a second later you're on the floor, like crying or screaming or just feeling totally like numb, like you just sort of feel totally disconnected from everything, and you just almost like having like an out-of-body experience, to know that's it, that's normal. And that's, whatever it is that you're experiencing in this grief, that is what's normal. And so it's the end of something, and that's our minds and our bodies. And it's not just an emotional experience, it's a physical experience. It's a cognitive experience, like all these thoughts that are coming up. So it's cognitive, it's thoughts, it's emotions, and it's physical. It's going to come in and impact you in all of these ways, and in different ways and at different times. So Mella's going to talk more about, some tools that you can use to help when you do get these waves, when this is coming up, and how to kind of help you handle that when it does. Because we can't stop it from happening. Like Melissa said, trying to push it down, trying to stop it, trying to repress it. I mean, the truth is as well, is that it is actually healthy to distract yourself sometimes. Like, it is actually healthy to give your brain a break and to go out and do things and try to get your mind off things and to try to distract yourself, not in the way to like avoid it and I'm not dealing with it, I'm never talking about it, I'm not looking at it, I can't, I just can't, but to actually give yourself, you don't have to be in it. You don't have to be sitting in the soup all the time, or else you're going to boil. It is healthy if you can, if not in mind and spirit, but at least in body, to go out and do things, or to find things, or like Melissa said, watching those movies, to just like move some of that emotion through, to give yourself a little bit of a break from all of the thoughts, to distract yourself or to just move any of that emotion through whenever you can. And Mela's going to talk more about that. So you're not doing it wrong.
You know, when I was really dealing with this, I felt like I was always going like this. And I would have like oh, I'm doing great at this moment. And then something happened and I'd be like, oh, like, or like day to day or week to week. Like at first it was probably minute to minute. I was like all over the place. And then eventually it got to like week to week. And so, I guess to give everybody an idea, I know right now we're talking to you, but we don't know, you know, the exact details of your story and your situation, or you, like how you work and operate and function daily. So I guess if you guys could speak to how long should we expect for this process to take? I mean, is it a weekend? We have to grieve for a weekend and then we're good? Or is it going to be a year? Like where should we kind of prepare ourselves? What should we be prepared to do? And I will throw that out to you, Mello.
Mm-hmm.
I learned very early on. Our society teaches us in the United States, we're given 3 days for bereavement. And there's a sympathy card for every type of loss. But I have searched high and low for a card to say, I'm so sorry you were betrayed. I'm so sorry that your spouse cheated on you. I am so sorry that you've lost your perception of what you believed your relationship and your family to be. And when I came to that realization that there wasn't anything out there that, again, gave us permission to grieve, to process, I searched for the timeline. I wanted to know, how long is this going to take? Can I put it in my Google calendar? Will Siri remind me when it's over? Will Alexa say, it's done? You're done. You're done with the grieving process. You can go forward. You're okay now. Unfortunately, that never happened. I don't associate time with grieving. Now, stay with me. I don't believe that there can be one set timeline. But here's the caveat. Here's the catch. You will start to phase out. And grieving comes in waves. Sometimes they're really big waves and you're going to get wiped out. And sometimes they're like swimmable waves, surfable waves, and you can surf and you can catch it and you get that high. You get that adrenaline. You get that ability to move through it. And sometimes you're just going to swim back to shore and you're going to go sit and you're going to use your beach towel as a blanket and you're just going to try to get as warm as possible. And you're like, I can't surf the waves today. It's too much. I just can't do it. And we're going to go over to Melissa's house and we're going to watch The Notebook and we're going to watch P.S. I Love You. And that's how we're going to process it. And then other times we're going to say, I got this. Forget so-and-so. We're going to probably curse, use a few cuss words and say, I can do this. And forget so-and-so and forget that. I'm going to make this through. Forget grief. I don't need it. For me personally, I developed adult acne. I was 30-something. I won't tell you exactly how 30 I was because then you'd probably guess my age. But I was 30-something and I developed adult acne. And I went to many dermatologists and they said, it's your stress. No, folks, it wasn't stress. It was my grief coming out. It will come out physically. So timeline is this. You've got to grieve. You've got to find what works for you to grieve. Time cannot be relevant right now. What needs to be relevant is your well-being, your mental health, and learning that you are making it through the impossible. Well, how do I grieve is probably what the question is. How do I grieve? What do I do to grieve? What do I do to feel better? Not this feeling, physical feelings in my stomach, the brain fog, the shock, the denial. Denial was huge for me. And you'll Google it. I just Googled it today, as a matter of fact. grief from betrayal. And these 5 stages that we also use to grieve our loved one or our pet or losing a job or a home or finances. There's these 5 stages. And I always say there's 73 stages from a betrayal like this. And I say that not as a therapist, as someone who went through it. And I'm talking adult acne. My child has just died. And I was begging for it to be okay. I just wanted it to be okay. I was going to do anything I could to make it okay. So what I learned in these 73 stages that you go through, and it's all the things that Julia mentioned. Julia's a rock star. In fact, Julia has helped me more than she'll ever know through my various stages of feeling through the betrayal. And notice I'm not talking anything about the relationship. What you're grieving is what your perception of what was isn't. You're grieving what's true, what was a lie. Well, I'm going to rethink all of it. I mean, I would go down and I would watch the videos of Christmas, of birthdays, the text messages. I read everything. I wanted to understand the why. And then what I realized is I had to come to focus on is the grief, is understanding that when I processed what I was feeling in that very moment, that would allow me to catch those waves. And I'm very happy to say that I go surfing every single day now, and I am living life to my fullest. So I want to encourage you with that, folks. And not because I'm a therapist, because trust me, I did not use any of my therapist tools, resources when I was in the state of grieving. And when I was in the state like you, I want to know how long, when, what, where, and when is this going to be done? And when can I go back to my life that I just lost? And if only I could do that for you, if only I could do that for myself, if only my daughter and her father, it would be different, totally different. But we can't, right? So the grief that we face is completely an individual process. And let's take time out of the grief. Just stick with me. Try it. Try surfing without time. Try catching the waves without time. Try to relate your loss and your feelings to in this moment versus I have to get through this. Because here's the problem. You have this expectation that when you go through the grief, you're going to understand what's on the other side. And the truth of it is that once you go through this process, you're going to let go of not only the pain and the suffering, but you're also going to let go of what you believe at this very moment the expectation to be. And that goes along with your grieving. You're grieving all the expectations, all the would-haves, should-haves, could-haves. So I hope that answers you about time.
Yes, it does. That like you said, it's so frustrating. You just want to know how long. I can hold on for 2 weeks if you tell me it's 2 weeks. So this is frustrating. We didn't ask for this. This wasn't our choice. But life sucks. There's great stuff, there's hard stuff, and we don't have any control. So, I got hung up for a long time on I didn't do anything, and I didn't ask for this. So I felt like it was undeserved that I had to go through it. So, we don't have control over other people, but we do have control over ourselves. And you didn't ask for this. It is not fair. And now here you are hanging out with the 3 of us and talking about grieving. Nobody wants to do that. But that is where we are. That is what we're going to have to do. And I'll tell you, this really makes sense to me. And this is how I feel. As for lifelong shoving crap down, I feel like every time I did that, I was inhaling. And I was just holding that breath forever. And I felt like when I actually watched P.S. I Love You and ugly cried all night long, then I was starting to exhale. And so now that I've actually walked through that, I have 3 daughters, and I tell them this is what you have to let this out. I want to show them don't torture yourself like mom did. So we're going to talk about ways. Everybody, again, here is very different places. So Mello is going to walk us through a couple of ways that she may use for her own grieving or for her clients. And so we're going to throw out some different ideas for you on how you can capture that breath that you want to release, how you can actually, because when you do that, like your shoulders go down and you can relax, like your body just is happier. And so we want you, the work is hard, but the reward is great. So Mello, if you will talk us through some of those ideas that you have for us, that would be great.
You know, again, we're taught at such a young age to, unless your parents were enlightened, which you're blessed. My parents were very Hispanic. You know, I came from a culture where, don't you cry. I'm going to give you something to cry about. You better not cry. And so it was very ironic when I did, in fact, become a therapist. You know, my dad would say, well, I guess, you really want to talk about your feelings now, don't you? And I would be like, yeah, Dad, it's okay to talk about feelings. And I think that the first step to grieving is the powerful exercise that Julia mentioned in the last week that we did, or 2 weeks ago that we did, about trauma. And it's talking about, to get it really in touch with what you're feeling. And when you understand, just to move through that, to just witness that, that's a very powerful exercise to kind of center you and focus you. Again, everyone is different. And when we were talking about exercises for the viewers, I wanted to be sure that someone had something for everyone. One of the most powerful exercises that I can give you is, and I want to be very careful, Julia kind of checked me on this, and it's true, the forgiveness letter. Now, we're not talking about the spouse. We're talking about you. Forgiving yourself letter. So what I would like you to do is set your timer for 2 minutes, and you talk to yourself, or you write to yourself. I like mirror work, so I like to sit in the mirror and, especially as I was wanting to pop, the cystic acne. I know that's horrible, right? But I would be right there focused in on the acne, but then I'd really focus in on forgiving myself. Now you may think, again, like Melissa, she said, this was done to me, but you got to forgive yourself. Because for me, I thought, well, I knew, or I somehow could have prevented it, or I could have somehow changed what has happened. And so I really had to forgive myself. I had to forgive myself for the times that I'm not so gentle with myself. I have to forgive myself for the times I judge myself and what I'm feeling and what I'm doing. I had to forgive myself for all the times that I ate all the Ben and Jerry's. There's probably a shortage of Ben and Jerry's in Las Vegas, Nevada, for the amount of ice cream that I ate during that time. I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive myself. A year ago, I'd gained 80 pounds. And when I realized I had gained 80 pounds, that 80 pounds of extra weight, I had to forgive myself for that. I had to forgive myself for watching all the sad movies, or not being willing to watch the sad movies. I had to forgive myself for all the times that I told myself to buck it up, to not cry. I had to forgive myself for my child dying. I had to forgive myself for all those lies that I said to myself. And in forgiving yourself, you will feel that emotion of grief move through you. And when you forgive yourself, it won't take it away, but it'll be less heavy. And even if you can visualize, as you forgive yourself, washing all that away, washing all of that off. And I always say, take a shower after, and you're washing all that shame, that guilt, that suffering away. And I know, girl, trust me, guy, trust me, taking a shower was the last thing I wanted to do through my grief process. I may have, again, Dry Bar may be going out of business with all the dry shampoo that I used. They made more. They have 2 cents now instead of 1. But I was dry shampoo queen. And I know how to style hair with dry shampoo, not really shampoo, because I refused to take a shower. But let me tell you, when I would take that shower, it would wash it all off. Wash it all off. And then I was able to be willing to see what it was. And when we understand that the denial goes to anger, goes to sadness, goes to hysteria, goes to brain fog, it goes to the inability to function, then I was able to look at it. I wouldn't say objectively, but I was able to forgive myself. And then that's when I was really able to say, okay, I'm grieving. And death is a big trigger word for many of us, but there's been a death that's happened. Who you were, what the relationship was. We're not going to go to what it can be or what the expectation is. Let's stay focused where we're at right now. And that's understanding that you have to, again, take the steps to really get self-aware and be willing to witness your grieving. That's all it takes. And while I'm like, that's all it takes, you're like, that's so hard. You're wanting me to shower and get self-aware? What are you asking of me, lady? But I promise you, if you take those steps, if you shower it all off, if you witness your grief, if you start to forgive yourself. When you go in the mirror and you say, I forgive myself today, you don't know how powerful that will be. And I want to say this to you in case nobody else has. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I am so sorry for your hurt and your pain. I am so sorry that you're experiencing this. If I could hug you, I would, but if you hug yourself, a big thing for me was I didn't get physical touch anymore. I was all alone. And when I started to, again, self-soothe, be gentle with myself, do the steps. We're going to give you a really powerful worksheet. It's got a lot of different exercises, something for everyone. And I want to reassure you that when you move through that, when you start to forgive yourself, when you're gentle with yourself, when you start to, again, understand the truth, not your perception, not believing that you can control it or fix it or make it go away, but when you start to believe the truth, it'll move you through that grief. It'll move you through that. And I wish I could say that I am the creator of moving through grief. I'm not. But what I do know is when you start to move through it, we're not keeping time, we're not keeping score, but when we start to move through it, you'll slowly be able to breathe again. I couldn't breathe for a really long time. I'd have asthma attacks. Couldn't run, couldn't function. And then slowly but surely, when I would take the steps, because it's work, folks, grieving is work. That's why the exhaustion comes in. That's why the brain fog comes in. But when you start to move through it, and when you look in the mirror and you recognize, hey, there you are. There you are. And let me tell you why. For yourself, for those that you love, for those that love you. Many of you have children. And you deserve an amazing life. So let's forget about time. Let's stop judging ourselves. Let's work through the workbook. Those are some of the simple exercises, but very, very explanatory. I'm an over-explainer, as you can tell. I'm an over-talker, but I'll explain to you. And Julia will explain to you, and Melissa will explain to you, and we've created this amazing worksheet. So I hope you'll do some of those exercises. And again, I'm so very sorry for your loss.
Millie, you got me choked up, man. Yeah, this is hard, and I probably need to say nothing else. Thank you for coming, for showing up. Tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next week we'll be on session 4, which means when we're finished, we'll be halfway done. So you are proving to yourself every time you show up that you have what it takes. So keep doing this work. Every piece is hard, every piece is important, but keep doing it. You're going to be really, really proud that you did. All right, guys, thanks so much. and we'll see you again next week.